But my computer's thinking.
It says on the thing that we're live on Facebook.
We are now.
Okay.
We're on.
Yay.
We are.
Yes.
Perfect.
It says on the thing that we're live on Facebook.
We are now. We're on. Love that feedback.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Heather with Ghost Education 101, and we are excited to be here with a live Q&A. Today, we are open to answer any questions you guys may have. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical issues on my end, but we are up and running. And so start filling in the comments with any questions you have. Until those comments start coming in, we do have a list of questions that you guys asked previously. But before we get started, I want you to be introduced to all of our educators who are live tonight. And Philip, if you want to go first.
I was just looking at Steve's chair. We have a ghost here in this lower one. I'm Philip Wyatt, one of the founders of Ghost Ed, member of MCAP. That's my paranormal team, which you can find us on Facebook, and you've all seen me before. So I'm kind of filling in tonight because someone else at the last minute couldn't make it. So we're going to have fun.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Hillard. I'm one of the educators here on the panel. My team is Pit Crew of Oklahoma, and you can find us on Facebook also.
Okay, and as you guys know, I'm Heather. I'm the founder of Exploration Paranormal out here in Las Vegas. You can find us on Facebook as well as our website. And Steve will be joining us soon, but right now, as Philip said, we do have a ghost in his chair, so feel free to ask any questions of any of us. We all have different areas of knowledge, so we can pretty much hopefully answer the questions you guys have. Have any questions come through yet, Linda? Or should I go to my list?
Yes, there is. Angela asks, what is your view on para activity created by people? Not poltergeist, but when stories are told over and over again and the haunt begins.
Okay. Does anyone have any experience in that? I've only heard stories for that, and I do believe that the energy behind, you know, telling a story over and over can imprint itself just as much as an event or an activity or a person on a property or even an object. But I'm not sure if you guys have any experience or studies in that.
Well, I think just when you start even talking about spirits and haunts, I think if there's any around, the ears may perk up and take the opportunity to join in. I mean, if you're talking about a particular location, if you have enough energy and thought put into that location and the stories, you may be inviting something there that can start a haunting, but isn't necessarily linked to that building. You know, our minds can create things that develop into physical realities. If you look up the Philip experiment, where these people created the spirit from nothing. So, you know, anything's possible, especially when you're dealing with the paranormal. So the more things get embellished, though, you can also dilute the truth about a location. So that's another thing we'll have to discuss later, but about doing your research on a location. But anybody else, what's their thoughts on it?
Well, I don't have a whole lot of experience with anything like that. Like Heather, I've heard stories where these things have happened. And I tend to agree with you, Philip. If anything's around, hey, these people are here, I can interact, and then maybe you do get some activity just by starting an investigation or speaking about something.
Absolutely. And next question, do you have one of your own, Heather?
I have a list of questions that some of the followers have asked over the last couple weeks, and I can pull one of those up. The first one, where'd it go? Yeah, Courtney had asked about a week or so ago, what is the difference between a vortex and a portal?
Anybody want to take it? Because I have what I think that they are. But
Well, Yeah, I know in the research I've done, and I commented on her post, but in case no one saw it, it was basically a portal is a way for spirits to jump between the two different realms from what I've seen. And a vortex is similar, but it's such high energy, it's almost like them swimming upstream, is what I've read.
And to me, a portal's always been it's that magic doorway from our realm into their realm. We don't know physically what it is, why it happens, how it occurs, why it's in a location. You know, science hasn't proven there is a doorway, but that's what we seem to think. It's like they're coming from this area. And then the vortex is the energy source, the battery that things are feeding off of. And you can have two in one. You can have a vortex and a portal together side by side, I believe. But that's always been my thoughts on what those two were.
Okay.
But a vortex can feed things that are in an environment that aren't coming through that portal necessarily, because some things may not be coming and going through a portal. They just may be there and their energy's fading in and out somehow. So not everything is like opening this door and coming through and say hello. No, that's what we consider a portal in the paranormal world, is that doorway.
We have another question. Aaron asks, "Oh, Vegas, I was just saying you don't see a lot of activity in the West. Would you say West is as active as the East Coast?"
Um, Personally, from the experiences I've had, because I did live in Florida prior to moving out here, is they're both just as active. We have all the ghost towns, the mining towns. Even though it's not widely publicized, the Las Vegas Strip is highly active with all the energy that's down there, and including a lot of the old mob locations have some interesting experiences at those locations. So I would say they're equally active. It's just a matter of knowing where to go and where to find it.
Sure.
I think the big thing on that is, there's history everywhere you go. Regardless of, when we think of US history, we think of America and when the English settled our country. But that's not really true. When you look at it, there is a lot of history beyond that, even beyond just America and settling our country. And so I really, agree there, where it doesn't necessarily mean that the East Coast is more haunted than the West Coast or anything like that. I think it really has to do with, personally, the emotional connection, the emotional attachments that have been created at a location. If you have a location that has had such emotional trauma or activity, there's definitely going to be some sort of level of activity there. Not to say that you're going to get activity every single night, because you won't. There's places that I've been where it's like, oh, this place is off the hook. You're going to get activity no matter what. And I'm like, well, it's dead. No pun intended. But it really depends on that emotional attachment to me, that emotional attachment, that historical activity that has occurred there. And you're more than likely going to get some sort of activity.
Also, you have to think, we're talking about reported activity. There are a lot of places that are potentially haunted that we'll never know about because they don't want us to know about it. It's like, I'm in Atlanta, and we've got so much history between Civil War and everything, but there are places that do not want to promote paranormal activity, ghost. They don't want the rumors out. They don't want to deal with it, and they're haunted. We know they're haunted from people talking about it. So, you got to look at, maybe there's a ton of activity out west that we'll never hear about because they don't want people to know about it.
It's still fairly a taboo, subject. Even as mainstream as it has been recently in the last 10, 15, 20 years, it is still fairly taboo. There is still a lot of historical sites that are worried that if they associate with the paranormal, oh, okay, our location is haunted, that people will not want to come and visit and be patrons of that site. So definitely, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and we have a lot of locations that we've just reached out to see if we can do an investigation. And they're like, sure, first of all, they're like, you're not going to find anything. And if you do, sign this confidentiality form saying you found nothing.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
I'm
Yeah, we
just
get a
dealing
lot
with,
of places like that where they say, yeah, you can come in, but there's no Facebook Live. You can't publicize it. People will not come and patronize our business if they find out that stuff. So,
mhm.
yeah, I have an investigation in a historic building coming up in a couple weeks that she doesn't allow investigations in because she has said there is no paranormal activity in my building. Although the people previous to her have put out tons of rumors about it being haunted, but they were running a ghost tour business out of the building. Okay, now she moves in, been in since 2012, no activity, but I have developed a rapport with her through emails, and she's going to allow me to come in to investigate. And I said that's one of the questions. What do we do if I find something? What do you want me to do with it? And she said, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I said, yeah, because I'm going to come to her first if I find anything. But she may not want it out there, which I hope she does if I find something, because, I want everybody to see it. But yeah, some people just don't want it known about their property.
And some of that could and that's the thing about the paranormal. There's a number of really amazing locations that we've investigated as a team, but they're not comfortable with that being publicized, and that's okay. There is some legality to that. There is some certain states that if you come in and investigate and you find something, you have to make that known, and you have to publicize that when you go to sell a location. Or rent the location out. So I definitely understand it in some aspects. In others, I can see that as a missed opportunity, because I know myself and a number of other teams, we host public investigations where they are fundraisers for historical sites, and I mean 100% of the proceeds go directly to the site, and it's for a good cause. But it is definitely one of those things where it really depends on who you're talking to when you're talking to them. Is it the right moment?
all right. We have another question from Craig. Craig asks, how can you tell if someone is having a true paranormal attack? Example, I was helping as a guide for a public event in a haunted location. The guest felt tightening in her chest and had real trouble breathing. If it had happened anywhere else, I would have thought panic attack. I'm leaning to it being in her head, but
Well, I know from personal experience, it is tough to tell the difference between a panic attack and an actual experience. It's more or less from what I've seen, you kind of have to experience it more often so you can recognize the different signs. And I mean, I don't know if someone else can take this one, because outside of that, it's you don't know what you're feeling unless there's other activity happening in addition to those chest pains that could lead to it being paranormal, in my opinion.
And also, you don't know this person's health situation. What was the situation they were in? Was it dusty, damp, moldy? Had she had 4 cups of coffee before she went on this tour? I mean, there's so many variables that could play into it. It's really almost impossible unless she like levitated off the ground and got through against the wall. That would kind of be paranormal. But some of the, a panic attack, yeah, that one's tough. I mean, that one's just really tough.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think it's hard to say. Go ahead, Linda.
I think it's really hard to say. I mean, you don't know. A lot of these people that come on these events have nothing to do with the paranormal. They're curious and somebody's talking to them about it. And it all could be a precondition. They're going to get scared or have this attack or think something's happening to them when it may not be. Or they could very well be having something happen. It's really difficult. You don't know.
I think to really compound on what Linda said, it is really difficult because, like you said, if you are going to a paranormal investigation, right? You're attending one of these events. Obviously, your guess is the first inclination is there is going to be something paranormal occurring to me. Regardless of if something is or is not, you've already set that expectation. You've kind of already set that thought, that preconceived notion that something will happen, regardless of if something does or does not. Truly, like if something paranormal actually does happen, it does not matter. The fact of the matter is, you've already set that in place. Um, the human brain is phenomenal. It is beautifully perfect at creating logic out of chaos, creating sense. And so when those things occur, I mean, think about it. It's pitch black. You're probably in some room that has some sort of four walls. Um, it's enclosed. It's probably small. People are going to experience that heightened sense of awareness, that heightened sense of adrenaline. And so, yeah, things are going to occur. People are going to experience those things. Um, is it truly paranormal? It's really, really difficult to say because we're already setting folks up for that. Um, hard to say. Hard to say on that one.
But tell them it was paranormal, and they'll tell all their friends. Then they'll all come, and everybody will be happy.
I actually had a public investigation exactly like that, where we all went, and this investigation was at a place called Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in
Oh,
Tennessee.
yeah, right up from me.
Love it. One of my favorite places. But this research that this individual was doing, that was conducting the public investigation, was more along the lines of mind over matter. And so one of the really cool, research projects that he did was he put a number of us, including myself, into the geriatric ward of the hospital. Each of us got a room. There was about 4 of us, and we were spread out along the hallway, and everybody else minus him went downstairs. He played a very select soundtrack of audio, which was about 3 minutes long. When it concluded, he wanted us to stay there for 5 minutes without flashlights. We could bring absolutely no gear with us. We had to stay there, stand in a corner, and wait for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, we were able to come out and explain our experiences. The interesting thing is when he's building up to this whole project, he's explaining what you might encounter, what you might experience. The audio was definitely in line with those sorts of things. And so I walk out and I'm like, I had absolutely nothing happen. I'm like, maybe I'm weird. Like maybe nothing, maybe things hate me, but I had nothing. And people are like, oh, we had spirits like, walking into the room and there was like 20 or 30 spirits in them. They're like, that's like a crowded room. Like these are small rooms. That's a rave. It was interesting because there was nothing going on. It was just what our minds were suggesting based off of what he had experienced, or excuse me, what he had explained, and the audio that he was dumping through the speakers in each room. So it's weird. It's really hard to say because of that preconceived notion, and what your mind is going to utilize while you're investigating.
Yeah, the power of suggestion's very powerful. That I've said on the team that I was on before, only the case manager and maybe 1 or 2 other people knew what the reported activity of the client's home was, and the rest of the team knew nothing. So they would not walk in going, oh, I'm looking for the white light in the middle of the bedroom. We didn't know. We had no clue what was reported to have gone on. So because you could be biased and start looking for things and turn something that's nothing into something because that's what you've heard happens. So you got to be real careful with what seeds you plant. Steve, is that the new owner? Is that the new owner of Old South Pittsburgh? The newer owner?
I actually have not been down there since Ronnie has owned the location. Okay. My team used to go about 10 to 12 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And we went at a time when we could stay overnight, and so we were there for probably 4 days at a time.
Yeah.
So we would we would bring food in to grill and coffee, lots of coffee.
We had
Uh,
a room there that had our team name on it. So yeah, back in the old days.
Back when you used to sign your name on the wall. That's what
Yeah.
we used to do. We would sign our name on the wall, and we'd stay down that one hallway past the nurses station that had the good bathrooms. Those were the good bathrooms. I know which ones you know exactly what I'm talking about, Philip.
That's why we boys go outside.
All right, we have a question from Colette. She's joining us from the UK, and she wants to know if anybody believes or is familiar with the stone tape theory. And I'm not familiar with it, so.
Nope, neither am I.
I mean, it's basically like imprints. Your environment absorbs the energy, which translates into an image, an occurrence. It's like our residual hauntings. I mean, that's the way I've always looked at what stone tape theory means. It's that resonation, that vibration of that instant that's imprinted into that environment is replaying over and over somehow. It's like taped into that environment.
That's that's exactly how I see it too. Stone tape theory, the whole idea that the experiences and activity that we have as living, breathing humans is kind of embedded into the stone or the walls, or whatever that material is that's around us. And I definitely agree. I think that is more of your passive activity where things are occurring that you can't interact with, you can't do anything about. It's kind of like those, well, I saw something, out of the corner of my eye, walk down the hallway and then walk into the wall. And then you look at the history and you're like, oh, well, there used to be a door there. I definitely will fall into that category of stone tape theory. Do I agree that it's like in stone? I don't know about that, because my walls don't have stone in them. It's plaster, but I definitely agree to that idea that there are certain things, certain activity where it might not be something that you can interact with, but things that you can record. So.
Here's some homework for everybody. Read the ghost studies. It goes into a lot of theories about how these things are imprinted into our environment and why, how vibrations and energy and things turn into hauntings. It's a wonderful book. I suggest everyone read it.
You have it? It's by Brandon Masulo. I love
I've got the book and the CD. I have the CDs in my car so I can listen over and over.
It is fantastic. No, it is perfect. It is by Brandon Masulo. It is a great book, and it definitely covers that whole idea and thoughts behind that.
And look up the Schumann resonance. It's very important in theories about why places are haunted. I forgot what the resonance is now. I'm having a brain, but everybody look that up. It's important to know as a paranormal investigator.
Right now, we do not have any more questions.
Okay. Well, I know Cheryl asked last week, she wanted to know what everyone's best advice for opening and closing an investigation and the best practices we use as investigators to prevent attachments.
Prevent attachments?
From preventing attachments.
Oh, prevent.
So like bringing the ghost home with you?
Depends on if they do dishes and cook or not. I mean.
Yeah, I know for myself, I know other people do things differently, but I usually will meditate before every investigation, even if it's just 5 minutes in my car, taking deep breaths and, envisioning that white glow around myself. Plus, I'm real big on symbols and crystals and herbs. And for like coming home, we have 5 crystals scattered throughout our house. There's black sea salt. So that's kind of like my way of not letting them in. And then also at the end of every investigation and at my front door, I always say, if anyone followed me home, you're not welcome. As long as you abide by my rules and you're not welcome in my house, maybe I'll come back and visit you at yours someday.
A lot of this goes back to your religious beliefs too. If you don't believe in ghosts and demons and angels, then you're not going to say a prayer before you go. I mean, it's a very personal choice on how you approach an investigation as far as protection goes. being a medium and the medium on the team, I am meditating before we go to an investigation, because a lot of times I'll get information before going. So I don't like to protect myself, because I really have a team on the other side to do that for me, because I don't want to be so closed off and protected that nothing can approach me, because, you know, nasty things have very valuable information, you know, at a haunted location. I can't just communicate with the love and light that's in the house. So if your wall of white light and love and all that's up so high, you're not going to see anything. I mean, I'm not going to get anything. So you have to, it's all a personal, you know, choice. And for me, I always say no one's allowed to follow me home, period. End of story.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing for me. It really depends on your personal belief, whatever works for you, and that's the same thing when we have a residential case and a client is like, what do I need to do to protect myself or get rid of whatever this is? It depends on your belief system. If you are, Christian, Catholic, whatever religion, and you feel like reading the Bible, or whatever religious document pertains to you, if that is your protection, that is what's going to work for you. If I go into somebody's house that is like that, and I'm like, well, use these crystals, use these stones, that's not going to work. If I go to somebody that the same thing, where it's like, I use crystals as my protection, that's what I believe in. If I go in and like read these Bible verses, that's not going to work. It really depends on whatever it is that you utilize to set your dominance over your location, over your space, whatever makes you feel comfortable in your domain. That is it. That's what works for you. That's it. That's what works.
And it all goes to the power of belief. I strongly believe in that whatever you believe in will protect you. It's, if you believe something
100%.
won't protect you, it won't. If you believe it will, it will. If you're kind of then maybe it's worth a try to see if you end up believing in it or not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I've known people to wear crosses, holy medals. I'm a devout Catholic, but in my opinion, that's just a piece of metal. It's the faith you put into that
Absolutely.
is put, that gives you the mindset, okay, I'm protected because I have this. It's more the faith that you put into it. And
Exactly.
I always say too, at the location and before I enter my house, that if anything is with me, it cannot come past this door. This is my boundary. It has to remain outside. For a couple reasons. I have an autistic child at home that would freak out. I have brought things home on occasion, not very often, and it's not ever been anything very negative, just playful, lights turning on, house alarms going off, yay, at 2 o'clock in the morning.
That costs money.
A strong odor of cigars. I found my husband, who totally doesn't buy into any of this, but allows me to do it, searching around the fireplace one night. And I'm like, what are you doing? He even went outside to see if somebody was smoking outside. For about 3 days, we had a very heavy cigar odor. And then, I just did my thing and said they had to go, and nothing else happened after that. Very lucky. But yeah, I think it's the faith that you put into the object, whether it be crystals, whether it be a holy metal, whatever. I think that's important. If you believe in it, then you believe you're protected.
And if something's turning your lights on,
Yeah,
it better be paying rent. Like, it better be paying some of that electrical bill, or it needs to get the heck out.
well, I came home one night, got into bed, and the computer came on with the music that Windows does. Got up, both computers were off. Got back into bed. We have a light with a ceiling fan. We have never used the wall switch. We only use it by remote control. Remote control's on my husband's side of the bed. The light blares on, the fan's spinning. And finally you just have to go into the living room and say, I have played with you all night. I'm done. I'm not playing with you anymore. I need to go to sleep. you know.
As
So,
far as attachments go, just briefly, some people say, I've heard say, oh, I'll have an attachment, but they're not a bad spirit. They're not a bad attachment. There's no such thing as a good attachment. An
yeah, you don't
attachment will
know.
be feeding off of your energy. It doesn't need to be doing that. That's your personal energy, your body, your spirit, good or bad. Nothing needs to be feeding off of that. It's unhealthy. So if anyone says, "Oh, I've got attachment, but it's not bad,"
No.
it may not be a malevolent attachment, but attachments are unhealthy for anybody, good or bad. Just wanted to get that out there.
And go
I've
ahead,
heard
Steve.
I've heard one positive experience to that. One whole one. And I've been investigating for 10 years now. There's one. And it is at a location where we're going to be doing a public event there as a fundraiser soon. But one of the owners of this, it's a bed and breakfast. You know, folks come stay the night all the time. There's public investigations, events, all that sort of stuff. There was about a week, and I'm super jealous of her. Let me set that straight right off the bat. There was a week where she would come downstairs, you know, sort of staying the night. If guests were staying the night at the bed and breakfast, she would stay there. She would come down in the morning. Her coffee would be made every morning. Now, I see you, Philip. Now, if there was a spirit that was making my coffee in the morning, I'd probably be okay with it. Other than that, and it was a Keurig.
Human sugar, right? Come on.
It was, I mean, she was like, it was fantastic. She's like, it's a Keurig. I don't know how it happened, but every morning there would be coffee made in the morning for me. And I'm like, that thing needs to come to my house.
Yeah.
No, don't ever do that. Don't ever make something, don't ever suggest something come to your house. Like Philip said, but I mean, man, coffee's being made for me in the morning.
That's an instance where we have to get a camera on that coffee pot 24/7.
Absolutely. Here's a question that kind of ties in with this. Anne Marie asks, as paranormal investigators, I'm assuming is what she's asking here, how do you fight the fear? If you go in knowing that something is not nice that's there, how do you not be frightened?
Adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
I mean, to me personally, I love it. I love the opportunity and ability to interact with something that I can't see, something that I can't hear, and the opportunity to explore that. So, for me, and this is different for everybody, but I am definitely coming from the scientific approach. If I have the opportunity to go out and explore something that is unknown, that people cannot explain from a normal physical explanation of how we operate as a universe, I think that's phenomenal. And so when I get into these locations and I have that opportunity and something's occurring, I take every chance that I get to record that, to document that, to analyze any data that I can. And so, that's how I approach it. It's from a data-driven and a historical-driven aspect. If I can tie that activity to something that is occurring, and I can tie that to like some historical factual data, that's phenomenal to me, because then I can say, okay, there's something happening here that is more than just like preternatural. It's something tied to history. Like I'm getting names, I'm getting information and dates that is tied to something that has already occurred. That's for me. Like that's why I'm like, I'm not scared. I'm more excited.
Yeah, and for me, it's similar to that, but I also use this new concept that I've been studying. It's called the power of self-possession. And what I do is when I go into a location, I truly believe in myself. I believe in my abilities. And because I've possessed myself, essentially, nothing else can attach itself to me because I'm confident. It's just like, a woman in an abusive relationship. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, a confident woman or man won't get into an abusive relationship because they're confident of themselves. It's that self-doubt that I believe instills the fear in you. And the more you doubt yourself and your personal abilities, the more afraid you are to go into locations and interact with some of these entities.
Yeah, for me, confidence plays a big part in it. And I've always been a run to as opposed to a run away from. My curiosity and my desire to figure out what's happening far outweighs any kind of fear that would enter in. When I go into these places, there's just no room for fear. It's more about trying to figure out what's there, what's going on. And if somebody sees something, I'm going towards it to figure it out, not running away from it. So
I think that is a very important thing that you said, Linda, is the mindset that you go into an investigation. And a lot of people don't realize that is when you're going into an investigation, you, especially a place like I know we talked about Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, St. Albans Sanatorium, Eastern State Penitentiary, these places where they are massive, destinations for paranormal activity. You need to have the right mindset or you will face the consequences. Not to sound like, oh, doom and gloom, but when you go into these spots, you need to have the right mindset. You need to be positive. You should not, if you're going to this investigation and you have an issue, and we all face it, including myself, depression, anxiety, fear, those things, if you are not in the right mindset, you are setting yourself up for disaster. You are going to bring some really negative things onto you. And whether you like it or not, they might tag along home. So make sure when you're going into those spots, go from that aspect. Positivity, bring your whole self. Don't be dwelling on the past. Don't be dwelling on any of the issues that you might be facing, because that's how we are as humans. But you need to set your best foot forward. Make sure you're ready and prepared mentally and physically when you go into some of these sites.
yeah, just to tie on to that, Steve, if something happens to a team member, say, for example, a death in the family or something like that, I will not allow them to come. I feel like that at that point in time, they're vulnerable. They're still grieving or whatever. It's not the right mindset to go to a place where there may or may not be something malevolent, or, it's just asking for trouble. And so we usually require them to take a little bit of time to grieve and get themselves back together.
Definitely.
And you don't want to give these entities the power to feed off of any negative energy among a team or a team member.
And fear feeds fear. If you're afraid, you're going to feed whatever is there, and they will latch onto it.
Somebody said that in chat, and definitely Colette. I think Colette said it.
She said
definitely.
It.
Yeah, definitely agree. Whatever you put into an investigation is what you're going to get out of it.
Okay, we have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it.
We have a question from Bob Burnell. He says, as an investigator, I try to stick to the scientific approach to my investigation, but I constantly come across things that are hard to explain, like having my spirit box session in my home and later being woken up at 4 a.m. with someone knocking at my door. When I look through the window, I can't see anybody. I believe it was a spirit. 2 series of 7 knocks each time. I did not answer the door. What are your thoughts?
I do a lot of ITC. Well, I used to do a lot of ITC at home, almost seance type with friends. I'd have them over, sit around, and I would do ITC sessions. But there is a specific way you need to do it, just like you do with any type of inviting spirits into your home. You open that invitation and you close that invitation, meaning they must not stay in your house when we're finished. So if you're doing spirit box sessions at home, before you close, my ritual is I do a countdown 5 to 1. When I get to 1, you better be out of this house. You're not allowed to stay here. And I ask for all my guides, angels, and everything to shut this session down, shut the door, and make sure they've gone back to where they were when we started. That's because if you leave that door open, yeah, you'll get all kinds of crazy things. I mean, when we've done these experiments at home, we've captured shadows peeping around the doors in my house. You know, we're doing it for a purpose. We're not just like, oh, let's get some spirits in the house. You know, let's see what we can do. You know, shadows walking behind people, but then we always would close it down, shut the door, light the white candles. You know, you have to do it. It's just like using a Ouija board, kind of. You're all conjuring up. You're asking spirits to come. You're inviting spirits. You're opening the door. You have to close that door.
And I think, you know, again, it goes back to personal preference. I will never do anything in my home. This is my sanctuary. You know, I go elsewhere to do it. And when I come home, that's my time to relax and chill from that. And so I don't necessarily want to do anything in the house or have anybody linger behind and have to deal with it here, as well as getting called out to deal with it in other people's homes.
I definitely think it's a double-edged sword, and that's always something that I explain to any client that we have for my team. Is when you look at it, you know, from the communication aspect, it's one of those things where, you know, let's say you're having activity in your house and you're not quite sure if things are occurring or not. As soon as you open up that communication, that door, things might start occurring. And so when somebody's like, you know, do I want somebody to come investigate my house? Well, you know, the question is really on you. I can't answer that. I can't answer that as an investigator from any professional sense, because it really depends on what answer you're looking for. What is your outcome of investigating? If it's something where you want answers, you want to communicate back and forth so that you can find that common ground, that understanding between whatever is there, then sure, we'll come in and investigate. But if you're like, I don't want anything to happen, don't talk to it. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, like my dog, for example, every time I make lunch, you know, because I've been working from home since COVID, every time I make lunch, my dog wants a slice of cheese because he knows I'm making a sandwich. If I don't make a slice, you know, if I don't make a sandwich, my dog doesn't want a slice of cheese. So it's like, you know, if you open the fridge door, the dog knows exactly what you're doing. So look at it kind of that way. It's like, you know, if I do this, these are the possible outcomes. I could solve the problem, or I could, you know, I could open that communication method up.
And ITC was not originally meant for us to talk to scary ghosts and demons. If you look at our forefathers in ITC, George Meek, Marcello Bacci, look at Calling Earth on YouTube. It was for healing grieving people whose lost ones were in the spirit world and communicating, saying, I'm okay, I love you. We've turned it into like, oh my God, it just said Zozo. I mean, you know, that's what we've done to ITC. Yeah. So, you know, what's your intentions when you're doing ITC in your house? Are you asking for the highest and best? Only of love and light may speak through this device. You know, you've got to set your intention, but regardless of what the intention is, you always have to close it when you're finished. All right, that's my spiel on ITC.
Bob says, just to clarify, he was building one and testing it, but after that experience, he now does nothing in his home.
Yeah, even testing it, I always say that we're closing this session. You're not allowed to stay. You must be gone. Go back to where you were when we started.
Okay. He does say that he went through prayer and set boundaries at the start and at the finish.
Okay, good. They don't always listen, but usually if something like that happens, it's like when someone follows us home by accident from an investigation, it may last 2-3 days at the most. That's the longest I've ever had anybody banging on the walls or anything.
Yeah, I know when I've had a few spirits follow me home here and there, they don't interact with me, but my theory or what I do every time is I won't respond. If I see them in the house, I just act like they're not even there. And eventually they just give up because they're like, well, she's not going to respond. Why am I still here?
Okay. All right. At this time, we don't have any new questions right now.
Well,
I have one
question.
that.
Oh, go ahead, Steve. I was going to just do one that they gave me a week ago or not. So, but go ahead.
I had somebody that commented on one of the shares of this stream. Megan asked, what does it usually mean when you see a silhouette standing in your doorway?
A shadow person silhouette, is that?
I'm assuming so.
Well, I don't want to give anything away, but I'll find out about shadow people very shortly, if you keep watching Ghost Ed. But a spirit, a human spirit, can sometimes only manifest itself as a shadow. It doesn't, for some reason, have the ability to manifest as a person. And these are different from shadow people, which is a whole different multi-dimensional being. And I'm not going to get into it because we have something else coming up later. So,
And I also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I had one years ago standing in my hallway, and this was when I was really opening up mediumship wise. And I'm like, okay, what do you want? What do I, because I didn't feel anything negative from it. And he gave me a bunch of information, and I said, I don't know who this belongs to, but if they come my way, I'll give them the information. And about a week later, the person came into my world and something was said. And I said, oh my gosh, I've got a message for you. And it was her grandfather, but he was a shadow to me. So, just because you see a dark shadow doesn't mean, oh my God, get out, it's a demon. It could just be a human spirit that can only manifest itself as a shadow.
And with that, I truly believe that it depends on your abilities and your openness to actually see the spirits. Because I would say 90% of the spirits that I see on investigations are in the form of a silhouette. I'll see them, lurking in the corners, hiding in the rafters, and I don't physically see a whole body, or they'll be pacing in a hallway. So it could also be how your mind sees the spirits.
I agree. I definitely agree with that, because on our investigations, we'll see that sort of thing. We'll see, shadow figures kind of like moving across the wall. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything negative there. I feel like a lot of people assume that shadow figures equate to negativity. And that's not the case. It could be, but I mean, that doesn't, it's not like, if this, then this, if you're a programmer. Sorry, I do a lot of software development. And so a lot of people say that, and that's not true. I've definitely seen that on a ton of historical locations that I've investigated, where we'll see shadow play, we'll see shadow figures, we'll see things. That doesn't mean that it's negative. It's just, that's the way that whatever that is has decided to communicate with you. That's the way that they feel best to interact with you, and hopefully deliver some sort of message.
Courtney asks, is it because they cannot pull enough energy to fully manifest?
We don't know. I mean, we have no way of knowing. I mean, we don't know what the conditions are. We have no idea. And some theories are that, we've had EVPs and things from the spirit box mimicking our own voices.
Right.
Come out. I mean, I had a friend run out once because her son's voice came through the spirit box, and she terrified her. She ran to call him. And my thought is, they don't remember their voice, some of these people, and they're using whatever vibrations or environmental things going on, EMFs, blah, 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 to communicate however they can. And they may sound completely different than they may have sounded when they were in their physical body. So, they might not know what they sounded like. They might not even remember what they looked like in some cases, is why they may be a shadow.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
For that, got off track.
No, I think it's perfect, because there is no exact answer for that. And I feel like that is extremely important. Is if somebody tries to tell you that, oh, they can't manifest, this is why.
No.
Let's be clear here. Nobody knows that reason.
No.
Until you get
Nobody
up there
knows.
and can come back and tell us through the spirit box, then nobody can say.
Yeah, nobody knows. And if somebody tells you that this is why, run. Uh, I mean, not like don't literally run, but metaphorically, start backpedaling a little bit because nobody has those answers, and that is at least right now, and that is kind of the really interesting and fun part about the paranormal. It is one of those frontiers that science has not yet been able to understand, um, and hopefully we get to that point. But right now, there are so many theories out there. Um, why do we only hear EVPs and we don't see anything? Why do we see things but nobody's interacting with us? Um, that's keep asking those questions. Nobody has an answer for it, but don't stop asking those questions. Keep diving into it.
And are we really seeing anything, or is that spirit using telepathy and using vibrations and putting those images into our minds, so we're not actually seeing it, but we're seeing it in our minds? That's the way they're communicating with us. That could be why you can have three people in a room and only one people see the entity and the two others didn't see it. Was it communicating with you through telepathy, and you were seeing that image in your mind?
That's crazy.
Well,
I've been
and
told that before by my family, but
on the flip side of that, though, some studies that I've been researching lately is that we're actually manifesting, kind of going back to the Philip experiment. You're seeing it because you want to see it.
yeah.
The EVPs and the spirit box sessions that we get, you ask a question and someone else in the group may be answering it in their mind, and that's what's coming across as the EVP.
It's quite possible. I've actually we're diving into that a little bit ourselves with the Estes method. Is when somebody's asking a question, are they putting that out there, kind of like into the universe, so that the answer that you're getting is an exact derivative of that question.
And how often have the words been coming out of your mouth and the answer comes out of the spirit box before your question's out? I mean, that happens a lot.
Yeah, we've seen that, and that, I mean, but it's so hard to say. It's like, is what, like, if Heather's asking a question, is the answer so? And that, oh, man, that's such a tough
It's
question.
like,
It's so hard. It's so hard to say because when you start asking those things and you throw a ghost box into the mix. And to me, ghost box, it's a broken radio, ladies and gentlemen. It's a broken radio. And so when you start like, where are we right now? And somebody, like, I'm in Virginia, and somebody's like, Virginia, and it's like, well, that's great, but 100 radio stations in the area are also in Virginia. And so it's so hard to say because what are that question that you're asking, how many different answers can there be that contextually make sense? And so you have that whole issue with a ghost box. As soon as you dive into the whole idea of psychically, impressing upon somebody an answer, you can fall into the issue of, okay, well, I'm doing an Estes method and I'm answering what that person is contextually, my answer makes sense to what that person's asking, right? But we've tested that out where we've had two people doing Estes method, right? Where I have somebody sitting over here, 6 feet away from me, 10 feet away from me, listening to their own Echo Vox, and I'm using my own Echo Vox, and they're not set up the same. And if we're getting different answers or we're getting the same answers, how do you correlate that? If we're getting the same answers, it's like, well, is what Heather asking, is that, like, are we like picking that up subconsciously? And then if we're not getting the same answers, are we just nuts? Like, that could totally be a thing. It's so
The Echo Vox, can you just tell people quickly what the Echo Vox is in case they don't know, because some may not understand what that is.
Yeah, sure. So the Echo Vox, it is an application that has been developed that is a very popular thing right now. If you go on like the Apple Store, you'll find it. And depending on the version of your phone or tablet that you have, it's either going to have 4 or 6 word boxes. And those boxes contain hundreds to thousands of words. Depending on how you set it up, you can actually flip through those boxes. So for me, I've got an iPad. It scans through 6 boxes. It shuffles through them randomly, and then it also flips through them in a way that it'll take kind of like the first half of one word and the second half of the other word, and kind of Frankenstein them together. Since it's Halloween, they're gonna mash those two together and make a word. And so it's nice because what I can do is I can turn off. For example, my iPad doesn't have a SIM card. I can remove that whole GPS thing where, I'm like OCD of like, is it detecting where I am? Is it like, oh, you're here, therefore this is the history, pick these words. I completely remove that. Then what it's going to do is it's going to spit out words at random. Very similar to a ghost box. The only difference is it is not utilizing a FM or AM frequency for the radio. It is just using the words out of that word box.
And the thing with Echovox are there are so many variations and speeds that you can turn the different knobs that the possibilities of getting words to make a sentence is virtually impossible if statistic wise. So that's why a lot of people really enjoy the Echovox, because it seems to be one of the more reliable ones. I've got a ton of videos on my Brave Souls Paranormal YouTube page with Echovox if anybody's interested. I mean, I've gotten amazing results with it. So if you want to check that out. And it's like $20 for the app, though. It's not a cheap app, but it's a really well done app.
It's not cheap, but if you're really looking to dive into the whole idea of kind of like utilizing applications, utilizing that sort of medium, that sort of communication, it's great. We've got a lot of positive results with it. Obviously, it is experimental. Very clear, it's experimental. Utilize it with caution, utilize it with a grain of salt, and try to correlate that with environmental data, EMF, anything that you can. Try to correlate that so that you're not like, hey, hey, client, this is what I've got right here. And that's because that's what Philip over here heard. And it's just like, well, let's be clear here. So try to correlate it. It is experimental, but it is a pretty good tool if you're utilizing it correctly.
Okay. All right. Our next question comes from Mark, and he asks, what would your thoughts be on when to stop or pause an investigation due to activity? And what sort of activity would that be?
There wouldn't be any activity too much where I'd want to stop. I'd be like, can you do that again, please? So, I've heard people getting scratched and bitten and bite marks and all that. I've never encountered that. I have been hit very hard before by a ghost, a spirit. That was very painful. But oh my gosh, it just gives me a rush. So I don't really, if someone on the team is becoming ill, something's making them ill, which could be environmental. It doesn't have to necessarily be from the haunting. There could be mold in places, and there's all kinds of things that we get into that we have no idea what they are. And if someone's getting sick, I would stop, but not from spirit activity. The more they growl, the happier I get. I mean, I was like, oh my God, did you just hear that? I don't know what to say it. What did you hear? I heard a growl. Yeah, I heard a growl. Oh my God, can you do it again? So, yeah. I mean, for me, I'm like, oh, just please keep doing it. So,
yeah, I know from our point of view and experiences is if they're, like you said, if someone's getting sick, but if we have a large enough group to where 2 people can leave to see, remove that person from the environment, we'll continue with the investigators that are left behind.
Yeah.
We try to, as long as there's activity, we keep going to try to find the answers behind that activity. But the only time I think we've ever stopped is if we've gone 15, 20 minutes with nothing, no personal experiences, no from birth sessions, nothing EVP wise and nothing on a spirit box. We just kind of like, okay, let's move on to another room, or we just end the investigation after.
Yeah.
If it's the only room we've investigated, we'll do another place, or we'll make sure we at least stay a half hour to an hour to ensure that there's no activity. But we usually do move on if there's more locations in a building after about 15 or 20 minutes.
And
I would have to say that we, same as Heather, we've had people get sick. They got in the car, they went to the gas station, they felt better, they came back to the location, they got sick again. And so that person left, and we absolutely continued. In all the years I've been doing it, there's only been one time that we actually left. We were not getting much of anything, but every single person present had a very uneasy feeling, like we walked into something we were not supposed to be in. And we can't even pinpoint that to say this happened or that happened to make us feel that way. We all, every single person there, felt we did not belong there that night. And that was the only time we ever packed it up. And I would say that was out of respect for the spirits. It was obvious it was not the place for us to be that night.
I've had two, I guess, examples for that. The first being just out of respect. If we're doing an investigation and something, we're trying to interact and we're getting no, leave now, get out, those sorts of things. I just assume that is the easiest way to try to communicate respectfully with us that, hey, like, I'm trying to do my thing. If you could please leave, that would be phenomenal. And so, we don't necessarily pack it up. We just leave whatever that spot is. If it's that particular room, if it's that particular building, depending on the location, we'll move on to the next spot. And we'll just say, hey, okay, well, whatever's there it's trying to go to bed. Like, okay, it's 10 o'clock now. They're trying to sleep. Go ahead, you do your thing. And that always tends to like fall back to that question of like, is there activity during the daytime, or why is it always at night? Well, it's not. The other thing that I rely on heavily is some of our environmental data. There is one location that we've investigated where we found out that there was a lot of activity. There was also a lot of radiation, and there was a lot of black mold at that location. And the issue with that is radiation alone can cause visual and audio or audible hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
Black mold, surprise, surprise, can cause visual and audible hallucinations. You pile both of those on there and you've got, a perfect storm. And so we didn't realize that at the time. Luckily, we weren't in there very long. But when we went back and reviewed our data, that's when we found out that, oh, hey, by the way, there was a lot of ionizing radiation there. A lot of teams don't have that, I have found. A lot of teams don't have that, where they're not able to take a look at the radiation. They're not able to look at the spore count in the air. It's expensive to do, but if you can, it's worth it. Because those two things are prime examples of paranormal activity that is more psychological because of your environmental settings than actually paranormal external settings that are enacting upon everybody.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
One point I disagree on with Steve is when I hear "get out," my go-to is, why do you want us to leave? What story? You have a story. We're here to help you tell your story. We're not here to harm you. We're not here to make you leave. Why do you want us to leave? We may be able to help. I mean, I start getting all shrinky on them. I want to know, it's just somebody that's like, get out. Oh no, I'm not getting out. You said get out, so I'm in. So I do just the opposite. Yeah, I know.
And we had one investigation where in two separate rooms, we were getting no activity. And after 20 minutes, one of the investigators said, if you want us to leave, say one of our members' names. And of course, they said my name, which was kind of scary hearing them say my name. Then the second room, so we left out of respect for them because they just weren't interacting anyway. When we went to the next room, we did something similar because still no interaction, but we said knock on the wall. And immediately after that was said, there was a loud bang on the wall behind us. And we're just like, okay. So we moved on to another part and they were interacting with us like crazy. They just didn't want us in those two rooms.
I think
One
that,
other
like,
reason I would leave is if you show up to a location and you discover that the clients have not been honest with you, that they have misled you, that they may have something going on. That's we've ended one early in that case. It's like we're wasting our time. We're here under false pretend. This people did not do what they should have done in getting us here. That's when I would leave.
and it's a respect thing, and that's the biggest thing. When you really boil down to it, be respectful. Treat any spirit, and this is the hard part because I don't know. I might be the only person on the panel tonight, but I'm not 100% sure that whatever we're interacting with is human.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever it is, be respectful. Treat it like you would treat your neighbor. And so, if something's like, hey, listen, I don't want to talk right now. Like, let's chill on this. All right. Like, just be respectful of that. Be respectful. You'll get out of an investigation what you put in. And so, like everybody has said, just be respectful of that communication. Be appreciative that whatever it is has decided to communicate with you, and take that for what it is.
And going back to how to open an investigation, this is something that we like to do. Is we like to the whole team state our intention when we arrive to the spirits. That's not scientific. We know that, but we say we're here for a short while. We've brought in equipment to help us communicate with you. We mean you no harm. We've been invited by the homeowners that they're feeling uncomfortable in their own home. We go through the whole spiel, introduce ourselves, and ask that they work with us and that we will respect them and hope that they respect us. We go through this whole spiel on our introducing ourselves to the spirits or the environment. So that's something, you could think about doing because you get, more flies with honey than you do vinegar. So.
And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a firm believer in, talking to them or whatever we're talking with, whether it's human, inhuman, or, even alien for all we know,
Yeah.
is talk to them the way you want to be talked to. Talk to them like they're a living human, treat them the way you want to be treated. If you don't want to be bothered, you really don't want to be bothered. So, kind of once you find out that they don't want to be bothered, move on and maybe come back later.
Yep. We always, when we go into a spot, we'll always introduce ourselves no matter how many times we've done it. You don't know what is there. Let's say, for us, we've investigated a very specific location for over 10 years now. And we still come across different things. And so you never know when what you're communicating with doesn't know who Steve is. Like, hey, how hard is this? Hey, everybody, or hey, I want to, thank you for letting me come and sit down tonight with you and communicate with you. My name is Steve. Can you tell me what your name is? Like, that's not hard. It takes 10 seconds. And you've really opened up that door, that line of communication. And the whole idea is building that level of trust, that level of communication with whatever you're talking to. Build that first, and then utilize it.
Now, if any mediums or empaths or sensitives are listening or will be watching this, a lot of times we can tell if something is inhuman or not. Simply, you have to be aware of your own body and how it reacts and will let you know certain things. With me, if it's a super, super strong, something really bad, I can feel it pulling in the driveway. And if I get in the door and I start choking and my throat starts closing up, I have to get out and regroup and it's just the way my body reacts to that vibration of that negativity in the house. And it's happened a few times, but once I figured out that's what it was, I could use it as a tool. So I'm sure there's others react in different ways, but that's how I react. I mean, if it's something really, really bad, it's going to be putting off a really bad negative energy. You can learn how to pick those up and feel those energies.
Yeah, I always start to feel like I'm getting a panic attack. I
Yeah.
feel like the walls are closing in on me and almost sometimes like I'm being crushed if it's a negative.
Yeah. Nothing scientific about that, but it's just, it happens.
Yeah, I think what, everybody's goal is to use scientific methods, but there's nothing better than old-fashioned respect and to build that relationship. When we go in, we make it perfectly clear who we are, we've been invited, and that we're simply there to validate their existence. We're not there to harm them or anything like that, and we would very much appreciate them helping us validate their existence. And then we move on to the scientific tools.
And like you said, it's great because a lot of people assume that if you say scientific method, right, scientific approach, that means that you can't use psychic, medium, or any other ability or approach to the paranormal. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. You can approach the paranormal with a scientific mindset, utilizing mediumship, psychic. I know a very dear friend of mine is a witch, and the way that she approaches the paranormal is very unique. But she gets the same exact experiences and activity and findings that I do from a scientific approach. So there's nothing to say that you can't utilize these methods as scientifical. It just you have to broaden your approach, broaden the way that you look at something, and how you measure something. I have psychics on my team that are phenomenal. But what I'll do is, okay, what are you experiencing? Tell me what you think, what you feel. Let's see if we can validate that now. And so I'll use these two different methods to come to the same conclusions. And if I can come to the same conclusion, I'm gold. That to me is some pretty good validation that whatever they're experiencing and what I am recording data wise, we're good.
And you need to make sure that you document it. Sorry. And you need to make sure that you document everything, every personal experience, everything they did to get that personal experience. And also, I mean, because I do a lot of research on the scientific method, even though it's subjective and based on their personal experiences, if you have a set way and a set standard on how to measure their experiences and what would be considered something to, as far as scientific data from that personal experience, then you can also use the scientific method with those personal, like I said, with the personal experiences and something non-scientific.
But when you are presenting your final report to this client and doing the reveal of all your data, you separate your scientific equipment data from your personal experience, psychic medium data, and say, this is what we got with our equipment. These are the personal experiences. Nothing scientific, but this is what happened with this. They're totally separate, but they can support each other.
Yep.
And sometimes having the same personal experience the client has had, even if it's not scientific or considered actual evidence, it validates what they're going through.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't discount personal experiences.
Yeah.
There are a lot of personal experiences that I've had over the years where this is how it works. If you've been in the field for a while, you're like, man, I saw this thing, but my camera was pointed this way and I was looking that way. That's how that works. That's how that works, ladies and gentlemen. And so don't discount that. Other people, more than likely, other people have had that same experience. And it's not like to your own fault. It's just something that is intelligent enough to be like, oh, I see that camera. I see it going that way. I'm going to go over here. And so don't discount that, share that, but make sure you do it accordingly. And like Philip said, when I share like client data to somebody, I'll say, hey, this is what we've recorded. This is what I can share with you. However, I've got this log over here of experiences that my team has had, and I want to share those with you as well. I can't validate some of these things. I can't say set in stone these happened and they're not psychological. However, they did occur while we were here.
Perfect.
With us, our medium does not, he's wonderful, but we often joke with him about, hey, make sure you've got all your equipment, because his equipment exists of a notebook and a pen, and we're lugging in suitcase after suitcase. But he doesn't say anything to us. He's constantly writing, and it's not until we go into review and then he'll show us what he got. And like Steve said, then we try to gel the two together to see if, and one's matching the other. We can collaborate the different materials. And it is really important to separate the two when you're talking to the client. This is something that happened. We have no evidence. We can't validate it. This is just what happened to them in this room. And here we have recordings, or we have data to back up what took place.
Now, your medium can give the client evidence that can be validated, though. That can happen. But that's a whole little other separate thing.
Right. I mean, he usually does come with us when we talk to the client, and he can expand more on what he got, and validate it his way. But
that's more as a reading, like we call it, doing a reading. But that the evidence that medium gets can be validated by the client.
Right.
Any more?
So far, no more questions that I'm seeing here.
Real quick, one other question we got was someone wanted to know what type of equipment we prefer to use, and if we can give like a make and model and any tips on them. And I am completely useless in this category because I'm a total non-tech person.
That could be a 5-hour presentation in and of itself.
Did we not do a presentation on that earlier?
We've done a couple, and it's still, I guess the question was more or less leading to like, what is our favorite, or what are our favorite pieces of equipment?
Whoever asked that question, go back to our YouTube page and look at paranormal investigation, past and present, and we have tons of the popular TV show equipment we go over in that presentation. That will help you a bit. But
the hard part is everybody has their personal favorite, and that is a big, actually that is a very important question and a very important answer, is find what works for you. There's a lot of folks that have asked me over the years, countless times, I want to investigate, what do I need to buy? And so if I were to turn your question into that question, find out what works for you. Like, find other investigators in your area, and I guarantee you there are some. Find them, and for better or worse, just see if you could hook up with them for a little bit. See what equipment they have. Find out what you like. There's a lot of people that I know that have asked, for example, not to bash on one piece of equipment or not, but the SLS camera. A lot of people want to get their hands on it. They get it. They spend $400 to $500 getting it, and then they're like, I don't like this thing. And then it sits on the shelf right back there for a long, long time until they decide they want to sell it. But at that time, it's depreciated. Find what works for you. Find what you like, what works best for you and validates your experiences, and use that. That's it. Find what you like and utilize it. What works for you.
But always have a digital recorder or a tape recorder or a cassette recorder.
There you go.
And a flashlight.
The flashlight.
Unless you have night vision goggles, then you're
I love gadgets, equipment, whether scientific or not. If it lights up, dings, spins around, I just love it. The more things that I can get lighting up, the better. I mean, that's just me. Nothing scientific about half the stuff that I have, but it's fun and I enjoy it. I don't have kids. I don't have to put any kids through college, so I like ghost gadgets.
But see, that's you, and that's like Colette and Debbie are saying in chat. They like to utilize an audio recorder, and for me personally, that's it. You know, if I had to choose one piece of equipment, it's an audio recorder. But that's not the same for everybody. There are so many, and that's the thing about the paranormal. There are so many different approaches. There are some folks that I love and adore that they're not my favorite, but they like to use dowsing rods. And again, for me, the human body has a vibration. We have a frequency. And so if you were to tell me that you're holding these dowsing rods perfectly still, I'm going to tell you you're lying to me. But I have seen some really cool results with dowsing rods that also correlate with audio. See, there you go. We've got some dowsing rods right there. And so
touch them.
See, and I've done an experiment utilizing dowsing rods where they were in it's a plastic called lubrous material. It's weird. Google it. It's a thing. But I've had them sitting in this plastic that this material of the plastic is equivalent to skating on ice. And Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, I had it sit for 4 days straight, and not once did I had them move. But we had experiences around them. In the same room, in the same area, on the same table, but I didn't have them move. So I don't know if it was just me, you know, but it's all up to that person. For me, my favorite is I've got a 4K night vision camera that my wife lovingly allowed me to spend and buy, and probably loathed me for a little bit. I've got a deadlight in IR infrared lighting that pairs with it. I got a shotgun mic, a GoPro, or a Rode GoPro Plus, and then a Zoom H4, and that is my rig. Like, I will investigate if I had to choose one thing. That's what I'm carrying, and I don't care about anything else.
Deadlights, Josh Bender. They are IR lights that he custom makes that are phenomenal. He's not making any right now because he had surgery on his bicep, so he's really behind in orders. But look up Deadlight, Josh Bender. I mean,
they're worth it.
Yeah, I mean they're
worth it.
For a year or more to get one, but
I waited 8 months for mine, and it was worth every day. Like, they are the best lighting rig that you can ask for if you're looking to light up for IR.
Are there any other questions, Linda?
At the moment, there doesn't seem to be. Aaron had one question. Let me see if I can pull it back up. What are your thoughts on something on a mirror? I feel something is there, but I've never seen it and it never moves. Without seeing the mirror, I don't know if I could answer that, but
Yeah,
if you like the mirror, if you don't like the mirror, get it out of the house.
Yeah, it's without seeing it, like Linda said, it's hard to determine what it is, but if it's stuck there and not moving, I would think it would be a flaw within the mirror, but without seeing it, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
I just don't like mirrors anyways.
He's never seen it. He just feels it.
Just feels it.
Yeah.
You've got to listen to your body. You got to listen to your instincts. If it's your body, your mind telling you this is not good, get it out of the house, sage it, cleanse it, do some ritual on it. Try that, see if your feeling changes. And if your feeling doesn't change, I'd get it out of the house. I mean, because you don't want to go by this mirror every day and go, oh, so.
And I would also remove the mirror from the home for a while and see if you get the same feeling in the same spot, because it might not even be the mirror.
True.
Why?
True. So far, that's it.
So, not a mirror fan, personally.
So the last question I got last week from some of the posts I had is, what is your most memorable paranormal experience?
Ooh. Anybody want to go first?
I'm good at talking, so I can.
Well, I can just touch real quick. I've had a lot of experiences that I would say are my most memorable. I can't pick just one, but the one location where I've had all as many as I could think of would be Gettysburg. I've had everything from at Spangler Spring. I was taking photos, and all of a sudden I went through 4 sets of batteries with my camera. And this was back 20 years ago when it was still film. And I would like take 2 shots after I changed the battery and it would die. Then a few minutes later, it felt like something literally grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. So there I am standing there with nobody else around me yelling, do it again, do it again. So I probably look like a complete fool. But then shortly after that, we went over to Devil's Den. And again, nobody was like nearby close enough, but I actually saw a soldier walk past me through the part where that famous Matthew Brady photo was staged and then disappear just on the other side of that ridge at the rocks over at Devil's Den. And I would say those two would have to be my most memorable experiences.
Miss Linda.
Well, I would have to say the night I took the photo that I shared with you, Philip, we were in it's a restaurant now, but it's over 100 years old. It's got lots of history in Oklahoma. It's been a brothel. It's been a saloon. So when you go in, the stairs going up and you go through a door and you enter a long hallway that on either side just has room after room after room. And obviously that was the brothel. And husband and wife members of my team were just up there kidding around and laughing and joking. And with my IR camera, I took a picture. And it wasn't until I was dumping the camera onto my computer, it was, you've got to be kidding me. The woman that ran it for the last 35 years, Ruby Leith, she had died about 7 years prior to this picture taken. And she is a full-bodied apparition, is standing right next to my friend Karen. And when you scroll down, you can even see her little black and white pumps, which I don't know anybody who wears little black and white pumps to go on an investigation. So super curious, I pulled up her obit picture and it's uncanny. The hairline, the neckline, the jaw, the glasses.
Yep, I saw it.
It's definitely her. And when I showed it to one of her relatives, they actually dropped and shattered my iPhone because they were so taken back by this picture. So that would have to be my most holy grail memorable moment.
I think for mine, I mean, I've done some really cool investigations and seen some really interesting things. But Old South Pittsburgh has always been kind of one of my favorites personally. One of my so looking back at OSPH, we used to go down there and we would volunteer and we'd be there for 3-4 days at a time. In exchange for helping clean up the building, we would be able to stay overnight and investigate. So we would work hard and then we'd play hard, and then we'd sleep. It was during one of these weekends that we actually had a psychic down there. And at this time, and I still am, sorry everybody, but I'm very skeptical of psychics. I have to find that right person that can validate the right things for me and hit the right notes for me to be happy and convinced that whatever you are experiencing is legitimate. And we had one of those folks there. And so she sent different people to different spots of the hospital. And the spot that I was sent to was the emergency room. And I was told that at a certain time, something's going to occur. Not what, but something will occur. And so it was nice because I didn't have that preconceived notion that, okay, something's going to crawl out of the ceiling and do whatever. But there were 5 of us in this room, and we watched this figure, probably about 6 foot something, walk into the room from the emergency, the exit to the emergency room, walk in and circle around the room. And as it got to me, and I was the fourth stop in the circle, it kind of towered over me, and I felt this emotional connection. Like I felt all of this information kind of flowing in, and it's super weird. I'm not psychic. I'm not a medium. I'm just a weird guy that likes to talk to things in the dark. But it was super odd, right? And that was the first time I've ever experienced that. And so for the next 30 minutes or so, after this experience happened, which was probably 5 minutes, if I was done. I was drained. My team had to kind of like carry me back, like kind of like direct me back to where everybody was, and get me back to that location. And the psychic, she's like, well, tell me what happened. And so I ended up writing it all down. She wrote down what she experienced, and it was almost identical. And to me, that was one of my most interesting experiences. And then to top it off, that same night, I had my absolutely only out of body experience where I woke up, I walked through the hotel, and I realized it wasn't like I wasn't awake because I was barefoot, and I don't walk anywhere barefoot. Like I gotta have some socks and some shoes on. I'm weird. And so, I walked through the hospital and I saw all these people standing at the rooms. Eventually I make my way back to where I'm sleeping in this room, and I lay down. And before I lay down, I'm like, well, let me take a look at the clock. So I look at the clock, and it's like, let's just say it's 6:05. So I look at the clock. Okay, it's 6:05. I'm gonna close my eyes. I wake up immediately. Like I'm actually waking up. It's 6:05. And before I went to bed, another thing I did is I looked around the room. There were 3 other people in that room with me. And I don't know why, but I had like this urge to like, let me see where they're laying, how they're laying, what their orientation is in the bed. Okay, I'm going to go to bed now. I'm going to go back to sleep. And I wake up and they're laying in the exact same orientation. All 3 of these people that I saw when I was asleep. And that was wild. Like that was my very first and only out of body experience. And so that to me is one of my most memorable experiences.
That's cool. I don't want an out of body experience. That's weird.
It was weird. It was really weird.
I guess mine is a story that I've told many times, but it's the most it was most life-changing thing that happened to me paranormal wise. Was we were giving a paranormal 101 presentation to a group at a community center. The community center had been a school built in the 1930s. And then the school had been added on in the 1970s. So while part of the group was giving the presentation, 2 of us were setting up equipment because we were going to divide that group up into 2 groups and investigate the building, the school, because there was reported paranormal activity in the building. So this very, very, very small little town area, the police station was actually in this building also. There was only 2 policemen in the whole town. So I'm standing there putting up equipment, and the police officer walks in and sees me, and he says, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "Oh, we're giving a paranormal lecture, and then we're going to do a ghost hunt in the building." And he said, "They're here." And he said, "That's all I'm going to say is they're here." I said, "No, tell me. He says, "We'll be driving around at night. We'll drive by the building. All the doors will be open. The lights will be going off and on." He said, "We just keep going." So anyway, I had been seeing, well, the reported activity was one end of the building was a nice spirit. They think they know who the lady was. The other end of the building, they said there's just something nasty down there. They don't know what it was. Well, I had seen the man at the other end of the building, and I was seeing him in black and white, and I had pegged him to be from the 1950s, which was later confirmed. And I was like, oh, hey, I said, we're here, we're doing this. We'd love it if you would, help us participate, maybe scare the people a little bit. And I'm communicating with them just nonchalantly. So we do our investigation. Everybody hated that end of the building where the scary feeling was. I didn't feel anything scary from the man. The other part of the building, we got some activity, nothing great. But anyway, so everyone had left. The lady and the husband that ran the community center was there. Myself, my other teammates were there. Everything's packed in the van to go. We're standing there in the little lobby area saying goodbye, and all the lights in the hallway started going off and on, just like in a horror movie. And I looked at my teammate and I said, I think he wants us to come down the hall. And I said, you want to go down the hall with me? Sure, we'll walk down the hall. And that we got to the threshold from the 1930s to the 1970s section. Now, my teammate was a Marine, had been in the Marines, big guy, covered in tattoos, packing a pistol on his leg. I mean, just tough dude. And then there's me. We're walking. I said, I wonder, what he wants. And all of a sudden, we got hit so hard, like we had hit a brick wall at about 100 miles an hour. I doubled over in pain, and then I felt it go through my chest and out the back of my body like hot lava. It's the only thing I know how to describe it. I'm bending over, like grabbing my stomach. He flies into the wall and is screaming a 4-letter word you can imagine. I can't breathe. I've got tears coming down my face. I'm trying to catch my breath. They're running down the hall. Are you okay? Are you okay? And I can't speak. I mean, I'm in pain. And I was like, what? I'm not going to say what I said because I'll probably get thrown off Facebook. But I mean, I was in shock. It was so profound. I mean, it was life-changing. So that he knew it was that man that I had seen who turned out to be a principal from, forget the dates, 1951 to 58 or something. And they looked him up, gave me a name. I gave him the complete description of him, his glasses, his hair, because I just went right through me. And I was in bed for about 2.5 days, just with my ribs just hurt, like I had like fallen off a ladder or something. It was crazy. So it was life-changing. It gave me a whole new paranormal respect. So you always have to be on guard when you go into the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. So that's my story. It was wild. They all thought I was going to quit the team after that. And I was like, no, are you kidding? This was amazing. I said, I don't want it to happen again, but I'm glad it did because it validated this is real. If this, whatever he was, man, able to make me hurt that much and to throw my friend into the wall, who's a big guy, that's a lot of freaking energy. I mean, that's a lot of something going on that we can't explain. Mm-hmm. And of course, the cameras were already in the van.
Of course.
But that's my favorite. Well, not my favorite, my most memorable. I have some favorites, but that's the one that changed my life.
Anything else popping up, Linda? I know we're getting close to the end.
Yeah, we do have a question from Angela. Plasma light globes are made to direct electricity to the part of the globe that is touched. Do you think this could be used in a paranormal investigation?
We've actually used one. One of our team members brought one with, and we, plugged it in and started using it. And just after you show the spirits how to use it, because you got to show them how to use stuff first, because they might not have seen something like that. But after that, you could say, okay, can you touch the top for yes or the sides for no? And we were actually getting interaction based on that, and it was working just as if we were touching it.
And don't they produce static electricity? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
Which is one of the theories, that entities produce static electricity when they manifest, or they create it, they use it. So it's also, the possibility that it's feeding the entities is by using these plasma balls. Not only that, they're just touch them, but it's also like a battery for them. Because I see a lot of people have them on, paranormal videos and things. People are using them.
My only concern with them, because I have one sitting in my desk, is the reason they are enclosed is because that static electricity, well, first off, goes back to Nikola Tesla. That electricity is utilizing noble gases to cross that medium so that it's connecting with our bodies to create that easiest path, that path of least resistance to the ground. Noble gases are affected by RF frequencies, so radio frequencies. Truckers driving by, same thing if you use walkie-talkies. They could be affected by other mediums. So the same thing as like the Echovox we were talking about earlier, the Ghost Box. I definitely classify those plasma balls as one of those experimental devices. There is no definitive proof when you're using that. You can't say, well, the plasma ball, showed right, so therefore they said yes. Like, it could do that depending on a large number of varying environmental factors. So if you're going to utilize one of those in your investigation, you need to partner it. You need to parallel it with something else, so that you don't have just this random tangential data. Something that's suggesting something that it's really not. It's just that's how it normally operates. You just don't understand how those noble gases are interacting with the environment around it.
And as with anything experimental, you want to have a second or third experiment running alongside it that can confirm the evidence you get from the experiment that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want a really new, different, fun toy to experiment with.
What's Philip got for us here?
Have you seen one of these? You set this down in the dark, and if anything passes in front of it, it'll turn and follow it.
Is that a Dalek?
It's just hysterical. It's called a meepee and something. But it's funny. It'll roll around, it'll balance, and then if something crosses in front of it, it'll turn and it'll follow whatever it is. So go look that one up if you want to waste a bunch of money.
I'm convinced now that you are just trying to promote Daleks. That's Doctor Who. Doctor Who for all you nerds out there. Doctor Who.
I told you I like to experiment. The only way we learn is by experimenting.
Good night, Colette. Have a good evening. She said it's 4 a.m. her time.
Oh, thanks for sticking with us. I appreciate that.
And I can't even talk anymore. Anything else, Linda, before we wrap it up?
No, that seems to be it.
Okay. Are we all good? You guys have anything else you want to cover before we close this out?
Just hope, and if you have questions later that we always think of something late, just put it in the comments, and we'll try to follow up and answer anything that you think of later.
Yeah, and a lot of the questions that you guys do ask, I am keeping track, and we're going to hopefully use them for future presentations. So like one of the big questions I get asked, and it's actually our big announcement for the next panel on November 4th. Martha Decker will be joining us, and we are going to be doing a presentation on how to conduct a client interview and all of the stuff that goes along with that. So that will be November. I was like, on my screen, you're pointing in the wrong direction from where.
But if I'm looking on Facebook, if I'm looking at Facebook, I'm pointing at you. I'm pretty sure. Nope, I'm pointing this way. This is the way to look.
Yeah, she was a police detective, so she has some really great ideas on how to interview clients.
Yeah. So we will be covering over that on November 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern. So keep an eye on our page for the actual event page so you can set a reminder that it's going to happen, and we will see you then.
And stay tuned for the one. We're not going to announce it yet, but November 18 will be a great one too.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Above all, have fun investigating. this is a passion. If you're looking to make money in this, you are in the absolutely wrong place.
No
Uh,
kidding.
so have fun, but be professional about it. Make sure that what you're doing is what you're enjoying. You know, help others, help people. Don't hoard knowledge like Golem. You know, get out there, share your knowledge, share your passion. If you want to help people, but make sure you're doing it and protecting yourself.
And be respectful and be supportive of others of what they're doing. And respect yourself and respect the paranormal community and represent all of us to the best of your ability.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. We will see you next time.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.